is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Welcome to Against the Boards. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Chamberlain Bauder, and I'm here for the first episode of our Amerks and Knighthawks podcast on FingerLakes1.com. To give you a little introduction for me, myself, I'm a New York State Broadcasters Award winner for a podcast that I did for the last couple of years covering Western New York lacrosse, and now looking to get back into the Blue Cross Arena coverage with the Knighthawks and the Amerks. For me personally, I love watching sports media, but I hate the energy of constantly having to be in disagreement. So what I hope to bring to you is to educate you about these teams so that when you're getting frustrated watching them, you know why things are happening the way that they are. So without further ado, first today, we're going to get into the Rochester Americans. I had the pleasure of yesterday heading over to Blue Cross Arena for their 7-4 win over the Utica Comets. It was a North Division matchup that featured the sending down of Nicholas Aube-Kubel and also saw the Amerks come back home for the first time after their trip over to New England, where they got into a bit of a rout with New Hartford, a full line brawl to end the second period there. But at home, it was a big-time 7-4 win, dominant from the start, but according to their head coach, not exactly what they wanted as the final result. This is one of the highest scoring teams in the entire AHL, and they just got a new team member, and that is Nicholas Aube-Kubel, who came down off of waivers from the Buffalo Sabres just this week, and last night, after going 1-1, had what I think might be the quote of the year. And I think we're going to establish right now, this is an Amerks podcast and not a Sabres podcast. But after asking Aube-Kubel about how he felt playing on the line that he was on as the third line, still getting significant minutes as this team loves to roll 4 lines, he looked over at me and he said, "It honestly just felt nice to win," and gave me a death stare with it. And it was a little bit intense, I have to say, but completely warranted, and honestly interesting to see that this team is so successful leading the North Division and playing the way that they are, only a game behind the Laval Rocket at this point, it seems, only a win behind them. And then you get up into the NHL and it's a completely different story. But right now with the Amerks in the AHL, 3 All-Stars, as this weekend is the start of the AHL All-Star break. The team will head to Syracuse first for a away stint against the Crunch on Friday and Saturday, and then it is a party headed out to Coachella Valley for the All-Star game. The first, and no surprise here, for the first All-Star for the Rochester Americans is, of course, the forward and Sabres prospect, Isak Rosayan. He has been lighting the lamp this season. Just yesterday, had 2 goals in Hartford, had a hat trick. He has been absolutely balling out this season as he's trying to make up, it seems like, for the goal scoring that has left the team in Yuri Kulik being pulled up to the Buffalo Sabres. He'll be joined by Devin Levi as well as Brett Murray, all on that trip, heading all the way over to the Coachella Valley area for that one to match up. And this last week, Brett Murray was actually just an additional added player onto that list for the Americans playing in the AHL's North Division team. So with that is where these teams set up before the All-Star break. And before we get into our interview with the head coach of this Rochester Americans team, Coach Leone, who is in his first season with the Amerks this year after Seth Appert got the call up to be on the bench for the Sabres. But before we get into that, I just want to kind of talk you through where the lines are at this point for this Amerks team and how they shape up at this exact moment. Their top line of Brett Murray, Noah Ostlund, and Isak Rosayan is so fun to watch right now. And another thing that's nice about this, the way this Amerks team shapes up, is they have size or a true forechecking grinder on every single line. And so that extra oomph is really a factor for this team, no doubt. Brett Murray, of course, brings the size for that top line. The control of Noah Ostlund in between centering those two, and Isak Roseyan has shown through this season with already 20 goals halfway through the season. Last year, he had 20 goals on the entire year. Second line, Captain Mason Jobst centers the best passer on the team, and Lukas Rusek leads the team in assists with 22. I believe he might be at 23 now after last night. And then the big man in Anton Wahlberg with that line. Now, where this thing gets fun, to me at least it gets fun, is that there are still prospects down the third and fourth lines of this group. Konsta Helenius was the first-round draft pick of the Sabres this year. He is the third-line winger. He's playing alongside Nicholas Aube-Kubel, who said he's excited for the opportunity to get to have that time to bring him under his wing and mentor him while he's with the Amerks. And then it's the undrafted center in Josh Dunn, who's one of the alternate captains that got brought on this year for the Amerks that's centering that group. Fourth line, honestly gets just as much ice time as every other line does. In Victor Neuchev, one of their prospects. Riley Fiedler-Schultz, who's another one of those two-way contract guys that's just absolutely grinding out his points. And Graham Slager also down there in that true grinder mentality type of role for this group. Now, where they've significantly improved, in my mind at least, is their defensive core and in goal, of course. Devin Levi is the goalie for this group. He's a top probably 5 goalie in the AHL, arguably easily a top 10 goalie in the AHL. And the defensive pairs have significantly stepped up over time. No longer are the days of Jeremy Davy and Joe Saccone. It is now Kale Clegg and Vezvolod Komarov. I hope I didn't butcher that, but I probably did. As the top pair, Zach Metza, of course, who came off of that NCAA championship with Quinnipiac as their captain, then immediately signed with the Amerks a couple years ago during the playoffs. He's on a line with Nikita Novikov, who is lighting the lamp with points for this group as a defenseman. And then on your third pair, you have Ryan Johnson. He's matched up with Jack Rathbone right now. Likely just having Ryan Johnson on your third pair of defensemen is completely wild. This is a kid who was getting NHL games regularly last year as a 6th or 7th defenseman, and he's on the third pair of defensemen for this group. And it really just speaks to how much they run lines. And getting into talking with Coach Leone after the game last night, it was interesting to see a lot of his perspectives on hockey. He went off on a bit of a tirade and a tangent about boring hockey is winning hockey. And it was really interesting then also today to get to sit down with him and talk more in depth with him about that. So without further ado, we'll send you to our interview with Coach Leone now.
Here with Coach Leone, head coach of the Rochester Americans. Your first season with the Amerks this year. Coming off of yesterday was I guess for the fans, fun 7-4 win. Obviously, we had talked about it, and it wasn't exactly what you want, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, I guess, when you came here and got this job offer, just what was your goals and hopes for the identity of the Rochester Americans?
Yeah, first off, I really humbled and kind of surreal to get the job, especially being a young coach my age. I came to the season at 36. Now, not too many guys get opportunities like this, but if you watch our teams play in Green Bay, I want us to have, I think when I was reaching out to other people outside the organization, because I think sometimes when you ask everybody, they have their own perspective, but really skilled group, really offensively talented, but I think there was areas where we could be better away from the puck and being more of maybe not just with some of our guys the most physical teams, but there's certain areas where how you pressure and how you get engaged and track where it may look like you're more of a physical, faster team in your kind of a relentless style of hockey, and I think we've done a good job of that. If you look at our just statistical numbers, we talked a little bit about it yesterday. We're top 10 offensive team, top 5 offensive team, top 10 defensive team. We've done a really good job where I'm a big believer in shot volume and in not passing up shots. Not so much if you're going to score on those, but creating the second, third opportunities where you kind of can overwhelm teams at times. And, I think we're second in the league in shots on, first in the league in shots for, but second in the league. And I think we're 34 a game, and we've done a good job, away from the puck and not allowing teams to get to their game. And I think when we're playing to our standard, it looks a certain way, and guys have done a great job of buying in. At first, you're always nervous as a coach. Talk to the mentors, and I've been fortunate to be around a lot of really good coaches, and just trust in what you believe in. You got to coach what you, at your core of your foundation of who you are, and that's what I came in a little nervous during NHL preseason, but our team played really good, and over the past 4 or 5 months, you can kind of, we have an identity and our standard of how we want to play.
Yeah. What was that bench actually like during your NHL preseason? Was Apps out there too for a little bit just to kind of like bridge?
No. They were just us, our staff, because they were already in Germany at the time. So
Gotcha. Right. Yeah.
You look at another. I think we played Pittsburgh the first game. They had, I think, 10 guys in the lineup with over 300 NHL games. Yeah, we were really good. We found a way to win, and then you can kind of see at the game. I think we outshot Ottawa 24-5 in the first period. We ended up winning, and then we played basically Columbus's real lineup, and we were 2-2 with 10 minutes to go in a game. So you can kind of see it in the group of what we had. I know it was preseason, but you keep score, and you can kind of, I think those games are really important, and kind of set us up, get into the season with a lot of confidence.
Right. You look at this team and you talk about shot volume, and I think that's a really big key. There were times that this Amerks team in the past, when it gets moments where fans or watchers are getting frustrated, it's when you see the first period end and it's 10-0 in shots in favor of the Crunch over the Amerks. And that happened at different times, even in the playoffs last year for this Amerks team.
Yeah.
Was that really, is it just for you that's just a focus of your game? But then
I think it's your play away from the puck. Like we're a heavy pressure team, and I think it starts with, we talk a lot about game management, and I think in pro hockey it's everything. So getting in on your forecheck and really establishing that in the way we could skate and pressure the puck, and then being above the puck. We talk about having 5-man units everywhere on the ice, and playing connected. And when we do that, it's hard to, the other team's got to make 2 to 3 plays to get in your zone, and what happens is you create a lot of turnovers and you carry momentum, and then it's really important to have possession in the game. You kind of wear on teams and you tilt the ice, and over a period of time it's really hard to play against. And when you get in the zone, it's about, it's one thing if you have ozone possession time, but you're not, especially the teams we play, like the Syracuse, I think we went there on the road. We had earlier in the season, the shots were 46-15. They didn't have a shot for 37 minutes in the game. And I think, when you create teams, everybody packs it in, but it's that second, third opportunity when you win a race and get them out of coverage and kind of break teams down. And you just got to commit to playing that way, and the guys have done a great job. I think we're, the 42 games we played, we probably outshot teams in 36 of them. And there's probably 1 or 2 games in the Charlotte where they kind of overwhelmed us. They play a similar style, and they're big, they're heavy, they're really good. So, but I think it's just a way, I watch a lot of NHL hockey, and the teams that are really successful are the teams that they don't sit back. There's certain times of the game where you got to play differently when you're up by a goal in the third period, but it's just overwhelming teams with pressure, and any especially when you go up levels, time and space, guys are going to make plays, and I'm big on taking away time and space. And if you make mistakes, I'd rather live with that than giving teams to set up in zone.
Right. You talked yesterday about that kind of boring hockey, and it brought my brain. I've been broadcasting a lot of Hobart hockey this year, so back-to-back Division III national champions, currently an undefeated season right now, and the key to their process is they forecheck to hell. They have possession of the puck, and when they have possession of the puck, they're able to roll 4 lines, and it's not really a problem. Yesterday, the first 4 goals of the day for you guys came from each line.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything really shared between the guys. You've got Zach Metza as a defenseman getting 2 assists in there. Just how much does that come into play?
Yeah, I'm a big believer. you got to play four lines. Now there are certain situations, O zone, D zone, face us, where we want to get certain guys out there, but I think, and we don't really worry about matchups because we have guys. If you look at our, I guess you would say fourth line, they have 25 goals scored in the league, which they have close to 50 points. I don't know if there's anyone in the league that has that kind of production, and we trust our guys, and I think it gives them confidence. And it's hard to play that way. And when you're playing guys instead of 21 minutes, 22 minutes, where they're playing 17, 18 hard minutes, and you just roll the lines and everybody's playing, I think you could overwhelm teams at times. And you're right. Sometimes the winning hockey looks a certain way, and I'm sure you see it with, I follow a lot of D3 hockey. I play D3 hockey, and what they're doing is pretty remarkable, but it looks the same. Mm-hmm. You manage the puck, you forecheck, and it's hard to play against because the teams keep coming. Yeah. The Stanley Cup winners, Florida, they're in your face. It's just they're coming. So when you're on the bench and the other team, it's really hard to play against. And you guys have done a great job bought into it, and they know. Even last night's game, it's great win. It's hard to win, but they know we didn't play to our standard, and that's a good thing. Like when you find ways to win, and I credit the group a lot. I got a lot of respect for them. We're 19-1-1, going to third periods with the league. There's something to be said about that. The guys, there's a certain selflessness and how you need to play winning hockey. And I know it sounds really easy, but it's difficult, and it's a buy-in, and it's hard. And the guys have really done a good job with that.
Yeah. My last question for you kind of goes in with that roll four lines. I want to make sure that our listeners know you're not just going into coach speak. When I look at the four lines, it's kind of uncanny how much it doesn't shift as you look down a line. I mean, you go to the third line for this team, and you've got an alternate captain. You've got someone who just came down from the Sabres, and you've got the first-round pick of the Sabres this year. So
it's a really good point. Like when you look at our lines, like I know I put them on the sheet, but on any given night, anybody could be our best line, and usually that line will get more ice time. I'm a firm believer in that, and it goes a long way with. To get respect from the group, especially as a young coach, whether you're a first-round pick or you're a guy like Fiedler Schultz that comes in the lineup, has 9 goals and 15 points, and he's on a 2-way contract, he's earned that. But I think it goes a long way in the group that they know I'm going to play the guy. I'm playing everybody, and guys that are playing really good are going to get more ice time. And I just think when you can roll 4 lines, the depth and we tilt the ice at times because sometimes teams are worried about certain matchups or getting guys out there again, and we just play. And I think it goes a long way, and it's a depth. You need depth at the end of the year. You have to have 4 lines that you could play, and I trust all of them, and they've done a great job for us.
Yeah, awesome. Well, good luck this weekend against Syracuse.
Welcome back to Against the Boards. Hope you enjoyed our interview with Coach Leone. I'm excited to talk to him as this year goes on and we get into the second half of the Amerks season. Of course, they are currently at the halfway point of the AHL season with the All-Star break coming up this weekend. What'll be interesting with this team to me is in years past under the Appert regime down there, which, let's be clear, the assistant coaches are all still the same in Rochester right now as they were under Appert last year. It's still Coach Vinny Prospel and Nathan Pache are the assistant coaches alongside Leo. So still relatively similar as a group. But in years past, this team usually is figuring it out through the first half of the season and then puts it together and is playing playoff hockey in the middle of February or the end of February, and it gets them to that point where they are ready to cook into the playoffs. Now this year, they're one of the top teams in the AHL. The key will basically just be, can they keep doing what they're doing right now and put on their best form of hockey in the playoffs? Ultimately, we'll have to wait and see if that is the case. But just for our wrap-ups on the Amerks here, as we head into this weekend, leading the team in points is, of course, Isak Roseyan with 20 goals and 16 assists. And second on the team is Brett Murray with his 18 goals and 15 assists. Zach Metza got 2 assists last night, and that puts him at a team-leading 27 for the defenseman. He has been balling out, and it also gets him up to 30 points on the season, and Lucas Rusick right behind him with 29 points on the year, with 23 of those being assists. That dude, I remember the first time I ever asked Appert about him a couple of years ago in a press conference, and he said, everybody on the Amerks team wants to be on a line with Lucas Rusick because no matter where he is on the ice, he can put the puck right on your tape. I mean, if there's any better characteristic that you could have as a hockey player, it's probably a shot. But Lucas Rusick has been doing it for this group as the best passer on the team for 3 years, and I don't think there's any doubt about that. All right, now we hit the shift to the National Lacrosse League, where I like to think I can give you a little bit more inside information on how everything operates when it comes to covering the Knighthawks and how integrated I've been in coverage of this team over the last 3 years. It's pretty deep, I can't lie. Between working for the Bandits last season, also going through that NLL Cup run, and then now coming back to this team, it's really interesting to have that perspective too. But all in all, right now, the Rochester Knighthawks, who are playing as the little brother of the NLL back-to-back champion Buffalo Bandits, are 3-6 on the season and coming off of a very, very tough 11-10 loss to Colorado. That's now 2 of their last games at home that ended in almost buzzer-beating losses in a 1-goal game. It was 19-18 against Halifax 3 weeks ago, rather. And then last week, it was an 11-10 loss to the Colorado Mammoth. Leading the way is plenty of shooters for the Knighthawks. Leading the team in goals right now is that man right there in that shot, Ryan Smith. On the season, Smitty has 21 goals already, but he's 4th on his team in points. This team runs by committee. Once upon a time, they used to be a 1A and 1B team. Now there are 4 guys that can all handle the rock and be in control and dominate a game. Of course, Connor Fields is the leader for the team. He is right now top 5 in the NLL in assists with 37. He's also top 5 in points. He and Ryan Lanchberry both 3 and 4, thanks to their assist numbers at this point on the season. And then the young gun, second year in the league, Thomas McConvey. He was the former number 1 overall pick in the entire NLL draft in 2022. He is currently 18th in the league in points with 14 goals and 23 assists. Now, this team defensively has been going through some injuries, to say the least. Dan Coates, their captain, has been out for a portion of the season already due to a lower body injury. Mitch Ogilvie, who is one of their lefty defensemen, has been out all season so far on IR. But the biggest issue for the Knighthawks has been the hiatus of Rylan Hartley. Their goalie, who is arguably the Dominic Hasek of the NLL, I would say that to my dying day. He is a cat in between the pipes, but he's been dealing with a lot of injuries. Last year, he went out with a concussion and was out for the remainder of the season, or for a large portion of the season, rather. This year, came into preseason and almost immediately went to the IR with a lower body injury. Now, where it makes it a conversation point for this group is what I call the Riley Hutchcraft dilemma. It is truly a situation that this team has found themselves in where Riley Hutchcraft has proven, statistically speaking, to be one of the best goalies so far this season in the National Lacrosse League. He is a top 8 goalie right now. He's posting a 79% save percentage, which if you're a hockey brain and you're confused, usually you want to be above 80 in lacrosse is probably your number, but 79 as a starter right now in the league is not a horrendous number, to say the least. Nick Damude is only at 77 right now, and he's a top 3 goalie in the league. So all in all, he's not playing that bad. However, his game has clear tells and clear issues, and it leads to situations like what happened 3 weeks ago where he gets taken out of the game for Kevin Orleman to come in, and you see the reasoning for that being 4 shots in a row going into the same exact spot in the net. I don't really know how else to put this, but every time that teams come out onto the floor, their film tells them to shoot on Riley Hutchcraft's lower body on his left side. For them, it's the right. That's the shot. That's where every team is trying to go against Hutchie. And unfortunately, it's exactly where Zed Williams went with 2.3 seconds left to go for the Colorado Mammoth. It's exactly where I believe it was Cody Jamieson went for the Halifax Thunderbirds 3 weeks ago. And it's where they went every time that he's been pulled out of a game consecutively. It is a problem. And now with that problem, I bring you what I see as my solution to it, which is that this team is a Rylan Hartley away from being 5-4 versus 3-6. I mean, those out of the last 3 weeks, this team is 1-2, and in both of those 2 losses, it is a 1-goal game that can, while I hate doing this in sports in general, you should never be able to claim it is down to one area as an issue. And there's a million other things we can talk about. We can talk about guys watching the ball when a shot hits the post and they're watching it ring out, and only Colorado players are running to the ball and they're scoring in transition. Literally every time that a Nighthawk hit a post and it created a transition opportunity for the Mammoth, they did score last week in that game. So there's always different points, right? But when push comes to shove and there's 5 seconds left on the clock, your goalie should not be worried about his tell. And that, at the end of the day, is the Nighthawks' Hutchcraft dilemma right now. And it's why they are 3-6 at this point in the season. Their defense has showed they can keep a game low scoring. They can also keep up with their offense. They can do it in every single different way, which is a great way to be for a team. However, they just have not been finding it in the last 30 seconds right now. It's all about playing a full 60. If there's one terminology I've been told in a press conference room in the NLL time and time and time again, it is to play a full 60. And that's something that these Nighthawks are still trying to put together. But I think Rylan Hartley would add a significant help to that. This offense has so many weapons, so many options. I mean, we haven't even talked about the 2 captains on the offensive end in Curtis Knight and Turner Evans. They're both the lower scoring point getters for this Nighthawks squad, yet they are probably the most consistent point getters in times when this team starts to hit a lull. They can go to their veterans and find creation from dirty areas or just from bizarre shots that Curtis Knight will take. We look at a player like Kyle Waters, who came back into the lineup last week in that Colorado game. He was out of the squad for their matchup in Halifax at that 10-9 win. Came back into the lineup, scores 2 goals, gets an assist. This team has so many weapons that they can choose from. It's just getting them all to play on the same page at the same time. And I think as we get through this season and as we go into next year, what'll really be interesting to me when I watch with this Nighthawks team is where does an A go once Curtis Knight and Turner Evans are gone or are out of the lineup, more so in a way that it doesn't warrant them necessarily being the captains of this group. This team has a lot of leaders on the defensive end between Matt Gilray, Rylan Reese, and Dan Coates, but they need one of those 4-star forwards between Connor Fields, Ryan Smith, Thomas McConvey, and Ryan Lanchberry to really take that step as an alternate captain. I think it'll be Ryan Smith. I don't really actually think there's much doubt that it'll be Ryan Smith. He's just kind of a glue guy while also having been a top 5 NLL pick. And 43 can definitely do the job of communicating with his guys about what they want while also leading by example. But all in all, it's definitely going to be interesting to see how much this team can continue to put it together. Last year, they got down the stretch after doing a similar start to the season, really, and did find a way into the playoffs. But once they were there in the playoffs, it was all for naught, essentially, as they faced the Toronto Rock in their matchup. Can they get over the hump this year and play through a first round and win it? I think that'll really all come down to the full 60. In a sense of, will the offense fully work? Will the defense fully work? And will Rylan Hartley be in goal? And then they can do that. Our interview this week with the Nighthawks was with the star of the show in Connor Fields. He is a man who I have now had the honor of watching play this sport for 3 years, and I can confidently say he is one of the most creative players I have ever watched with a stick in his hand. If you have the time, Google Connor Fields PLL Boston. Just all you need is about 10 seconds. You'll fully understand the type of player that Connor is after seeing the number one play of the PLL season from last year. But to truly understand the kind of man that he is, it was nice to be able to sit down with him on the bench during shoot-around before that Colorado game. Got a chance to talk to him about this team of the Knighthawks, to introduce you a little bit more to them, but also just him, his family life. He's a new dad over the last year, so he's been really living that life up as much as possible. So without further ado, here's Connor Fields.
All right, welcome to Against the Boards. My name is Chamberlain Bauder, here with Connor Fields, star lefty attackman, forward. We're playing box lacrosse, either way, right? But for the Rochester Knighthawks, I guess first question to you as we kind of introduce the Knighthawks to everyone. Just tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you went to school, and why lacrosse is such an important part of your life.
Yeah, so my name's Connor Fields. I grew up in the North Towns of Buffalo, East Amherst. Have a wife and a son. My wife's name's Laura, son's name's Finn, so they're really the big part of my life, obviously, and huge reason why I play this game, as well as, you know, the rest of my family. It's kind of how I got into lacrosse. Was I always looked up to my brother, and he was actually going. We're 30 minutes from Canada, so he was going across the border to Fort Erie to sign up for box lacrosse, and we didn't even know there was an age group for. I think I was 6 at the time. We didn't know there was an age group for me. And when we went out there, they basically said, "Why don't you sign up the little guy?" I've never been big, so I was always small, and yeah, they ended up signing me up, and I just idolized my brother. So he's kind of made me the player I am today, just in the backyard and and stuff like that. But went to high school right at Williamsville North, so I went in that for middle school, and actually transferred out my sophomore year and played at Bishop Timon in Buffalo. So a little bit of a journey.
And then you go on to Albany. You are a Tourton finalist. You famously create the chicken wing. I'll give you credit for it with your not award. But so you've played with, at this point now, you just got me through the fact that you were brought up through a Canadian lacrosse, which makes sense for the fact that you play box. But you've played with so many outrageously good lacrosse players over the course of your career. I mean, right now, you have this team where you have Thomas McConvey and Ryan Smith are both top 5 picks, right? Then you go outdoor, you're playing with Captain America. Then you go back and you play with the Thompsons, you play with Tahoka. I mean, the list goes on and on. But just tell me a little bit about what your game is like and how it's kind of shaped over time.
Yeah, right. So I feel like everyone's got their own journey, right? And for me, throughout high school, I would say, and even, obviously growing up and then going into college, I was really more of an off-ball guy, honestly. Catch and shoot, playing the crease a lot. I ended up going to Albany, as you mentioned, freshman year, playing with Lyle, right? And they don't really need a ball carrier, right? So I got lucky because they had Miles and Ty, who just graduated the year before. So there's 2 open attack spots, and I think, as you know, with any team, right, it's not about, being the best player. It's whoever fits, what they need, right, the most. And, obviously we had a lot of tremendous players at Albany, but I ended up getting to start and play with Lyle, be that off-ball player that I've always been. But he was a huge part of my development. In practice, he'd always give me a bunch of pointers and tips. And in high school, right, it was cool playing with him in college, because in high school, that's who I looked up to, right, and watched all their games, right, after I committed to watching all their games and just seeing how creative. And that's kind of where I get my creativity too. I'd say my brother and I in the backyard too, we just always would mess around and just, do whatever back there. And it was, definitely not the typical lacrosse, overhand shot and stuff like that, right? We're trying to be creative out there behind the back. We're pretending like we're on, ESPN or the national championship game, right, in the backyard, and just visualizing that. But so yeah, like you said, I've been really privileged to be able to be on teams with a lot of great players, and I try to be a sponge, right? No matter if it's Lyle, who was a senior when I was a freshman, or whether it's now where I'm, kind of a veteran on this team, but we have, younger, like you mentioned, T-Mac, right? #1 overall pick. He's a great player, right? And I learn things from him still, right? So it doesn't matter if it's guys are older than you, younger than you. I just try to be a sponge and try to take as much as I can because, obviously you don't want to be the same every year or else you kind of plateau. So, I want to keep getting better too, just as everyone else.
Right. Well, last thing to kind of give our listeners an image of how you got here. So obviously you go to Buffalo and you talk about being an off-ball guy. You have to live as an off-ball guy because you have Josh Byrne and Dane Smith there. Then obviously you have can you just describe the expansion draft situation to me? Because you will put it into better words than I would try to describe it to our listeners right now.
Yeah, so, being in Buffalo, was awesome. I grew up going to Bandits games. Banditland is definitely crazy and very loud and passionate fans, and just like we have here in Rochester. But like you said, being an off-ball, and that's something I pride myself on, is not just being one-dimensional. I can play with the ball, I can play without the ball. So just wherever I could fit, right? However I could fit. And I did the same kind of in San Diego too before that. Just whatever they need me, however I could fit. And then, I felt like I really got my opportunity when coming here. But to kind of go with what you're saying too with the expansion draft, it was an interesting situation because I ended up getting traded. I ended up getting a call from Buffalo maybe a couple days before the expansion draft, just saying that they're not going to protect me. Obviously they said they're hoping that they're going to keep me, but, they ended up leaving me unprotected. A couple days later, I got a call from Coach Williams over there, and he asked it about availability playing. And I just had a hard time in San Diego with things going on back home, being out there. So I felt like it was going to be unfair because that was one of the reasons I got back to the East Coast was to be on the West Coast. So I felt like, one, it was unfair, but two, I really wouldn't have been able to make it work playing out in Las Vegas. And I think Coach Williams knew that too. So as soon as he asked that, and I kind of basically said what I just said now, he was so good about it. And, I give him credit because, I hear how good of a guy he is, but really talking to him, you could see how great of a guy he is and how great of a coach he is. But then he said, they do have something in the works right now with Rochester. Possibly they would take me and they're going to trade me to Rochester, immediately after. Would that be something? And that's what I give him credit for too, because he was asking me, right? He could have just did it, right, and sent me wherever. But he asked me if that would work for me, and I totally respect that out of him, and respect him as, like I said, a person and the coach. But so that's how that came along. I talked to Dan Carey right after, and I felt like, it felt like home right away talking with him, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and now, you've been able to build your life kind of more so here, at least around this Ontario into greater New York area. Just tell me a little bit about what it's been like this last year being able to be a dad. I know all the guys, whenever I ask them, is Fields going to coach in the UCBLL? They're like, no. No, he's not. He's way too dialed into being a dad to be coaching. So tell me about family life.
Yeah, we're loving it. Our son just turned 1 January 10th, so it's been awesome. I think it just brings, I think you ask any parent or people are, obviously friends or family or your parents, right, or anything like that about being a parent, and they say it's the best thing ever. And you think in your head, you're like, I'm sure it is, but, we'll see how it is when that time comes, right? And it really is. It's better than anyone even explains. We love all our time with him, and honestly, it makes it sometimes difficult traveling, for games and being gone a lot, for practices or games and whatnot, just because you don't want to miss those first steps, right? The first words, right? There's those small moments because those are big parts of, their childhood. So it makes it a little bit difficult that way, but it's the best thing that's, I think you asked my wife too, it's the best thing that's happened to us. We love our son Finn, and he's coming tonight. He comes to a lot of the games, so it's cool to see him in the stands and just, around this game that, I love playing. That's been a big part of my life and my wife's life. She was a lacrosse player too. So just to have him around the game and, around the stadium is super cool.
Yeah, you prompted me right into kind of my last question here. Obviously, you've had quite a year of lacrosse when it comes to, I mean, just, I was there at Harvard when you shot that. That was, I was just like jaw agape. I was like, what did I just witness? This is the most outrageous thing I've ever seen. Obviously, Finn's a little young to remember that. But when you think about, like, I mean, my dad sits right up there, literally right behind your parents in his season ticket seats. So I actually, the other first game of the season, I was like, wait, that's everyone. I know who these people are. So how is it for you to know that he's going to get to grow up watching you do this?
It's cool. I mean, for me, it's not about, him being around the game and getting into lacrosse. I mean, we'd love for him to play lacrosse, but really, the thing I try to do out there is the little things, right? Just working as hard as I can. I think that's been instilled in me since I was young with my parents. It's just whatever you're doing, you got to give 100% in. And obviously, I love this game and I love playing it. So that's, the reason I'm still playing. But, I think for me, if I wasn't giving 100% or, if I wasn't 100% in mentally too or physically, then, that's when it's probably time to be done. But for me, that's what I want to instill in him too. It's just, a hard work ethic and, you got to go out there and give it your all, everything you do, whether it's, a sport, whether it's school, whether it's whatever, so a job, that's what we want to instill in him. So it's cool having him around to see this and be a part of it and, see my family and friends and, up in the stands too, because they've all been big parts of my life, but we've all been to these games growing up too, right? And it's cool to have them here while, I'm on the floor.
Yeah. I guess the last thing for the fans that I want to be able to sum up, just if you had to give an identity to this team, the way that you guys come out on the floor every night, how would you define it?
I would say this team is resilient would be one word I would put, right? I think, we've had our ups and downs this season already, and the season's still young, right? There's a lot of season left, but I really think we have such a tight group. And I think if you ask anyone around the locker room, and you're around us all the time, right? We really do have a special group here. We have a really talented team. It's just putting it together, right? And I think we're doing that each game. And I think each game we've been getting better and better and putting more full games together. And you look at that last game, right? It's coming out with that win on the road. Though that's a tough one to get, right? And for that, and I know Coach Hazen mentioned it too, with that could be the turning point for us this season. But that's obviously was mentioned, but it's not what we're thinking about. But we're going to use it as momentum, right, and keep going, right, and keep building that momentum. And I think the resiliency of this team is no quit. And I think you see that too with some of our, if we're down in a game, some of our comebacks and stuff like that. And we just are a group that really enjoy being around each other, so we want to keep it going.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed our interview with Connor Fields. Of course, getting a little bit more on the personal side there with him, because at this point, as you've seen from that, I've talked to Connor plenty of times over the past 3 years now at this point, and every time it's always fun to try to pull a little bit more out of these lacrosse guys who love to get into their coach speak and their team speak and kind of take them out of their shell a little bit as much as you can. So finally, as we start to wrap up here on our first episode of Against the Boards, we're going to just cap it off. First, Amerks, of course, this weekend they have the Syracuse Crunch on the road, and then it's the All-Star game and that break on the Sunday and Monday. Then we'll have another episode before their next game, which will be at home against the Belleville Senators. So not for sure going to have another Amerks interview for you this week, but our plan at the moment is that in 2 weeks, we'll have Devin Levi or Isak Roseanne post All-Star break talking to us about that experience. And then for the Knighthawks this week, they head down to Philadelphia to take on the Wings, one of the higher ranked teams in the NLL. They're 5-2 right now coming into this week. They played 2 less games than the Knighthawks, but they're scoring more goals per game and also allowing more goals per game at this point in the season. It'll be interesting to see how these two teams match up. Definitely when it comes to the offensive firepower that both groups have, it could prove to be one of those 15-16 type games. But I won't lie, that was my preview for the Colorado Mammoth game, and that one ended 10-11. And I think that we're looking right along those lines for this matchup here for the Knighthawks. The question will be if in that first quarter, if their offense can find their footing early, it's a whole different game, I think, for this Knighthawks squad. And that's the other key to that full 60, like we talked about before. So we'll just have to wait and see if the Amerks can, or if the Knighthawks can get that little bit closer to 500. Meanwhile, the Amerks will be getting ready for a big old homestand that we'll be able to hit you with more information previewing next week. But for today on Against the Boards, that's going to do it. I've been Chamberlain Bauder. Have a good night.